people say it's on the Akashic records. Some people say you can turn to your angel and ask, which way. And in the book, I talk about how my angel, when my angel sees me stuff up, like respond in a bit of a careless way in an email, or I see someone wants help and I don't give it, or I walk past the homeless person because I think, well, I've just given $2 to that homeless person. What am I going to do? Like when I do that kind of thing, I know my angel's watching over me going, all right, Kim.
Welcome back to Soulmates and Suitcases. My name is Lisa Brarley, and finally, after a few weeks,
back in Thailand,
my husband, co-host Scott Brarley, is beside me. If you are new to Soulmates and Suitcases, our podcast is a space where we have honest and open and lots of raw conversations about healing and resilience, relationships, mental health, and of course, all those stories that shape us. You can find us on so many platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and TrueFans.fm. Today, we do have a special guest with us today. We would like to welcome Kim Billington. Welcome, Kim.
Welcome, Kim. Look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate having this opportunity to have my voice heard, because I'm reflecting all the time on other people's voices, and I gather them like pearls. And it's very special to share them today.
I love that. I love that. Today, Kim, I'm going to share a little bit about you, and then we'll kind of jump into our conversation. So Kim Billington is a counselor and an educator and author as well. Her book is called Integrating Spiritual Conversations in Therapy. There it is.
Nice.
Love that photo on the front as well. I have a connection to that one. And her work explores kind of the role of spirituality and connection and meaning within the therapeutic relationships. And so we'll jump into our conversation here, Kim, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do currently and what brought you to writing your book.
Well, I wrote a couple of books a few years ago, and people always said, when's the next one? And I said, no, I'm done now. Two's plenty. And then I realized that a lot of the mainstream conversations I was hearing outside of therapy were infused with spirituality. And yet with my own colleagues and the professional registration bodies I work with, that was off board. You're not allowed to talk about this stuff. There is no PD that a therapist can do that talks about integrating spiritual conversations in their work, apart from some transpersonal kind of, folk. Yeah. So I work with conversations about spirituality, whatever that means, with my clients and my supervisees. So I also provide clinical supervision. Once a month, a counsellor needs to see a supervisor to unpack the challenges and get some ideas moving forward, manage their own self-care and that kind of thing. So I'm a supervisor of counsellors. And I'm always asking them, well, who's watching over you? Have you got a guardian angel? It's very safe to ask these counsellors these questions. They might not want to ask them of their clients. So I thought I need to help them open the door for clients to either step through and talk about their spiritual encounters, or to just leave it if it doesn't feel safe or appropriate. So I decided I'm going to write the book about that. I'm going to write a book about how you might open the door and invite a client to talk about an ancestor that they feel is close, or watching over them, or helping them, or a place to unpack when your husband died, you felt that he appeared to you on a chair and then disappeared, like a place. Yeah, this is my whole idea is to make sure people know what to do to open the door for counsellors and clients to just say it how it is.
Yes, yeah, because you do say that your book is kind of meant for, the therapist, the counselor, the social worker. But I know for me, I just come from this place of curiosity. That's kind of where I'm really curious about the whole understanding the spirituality side of life. So when you talk about, kind of educating your counselors that work with you, on how to have or support their clients. So do you actually recommend that the counselor sort of go through that journey first in regards to understanding?
Well, I think it happens it'll either happen or it won't. We can't control how it's going to happen. Once you have a bit of information, like the fact that, I think it's 38% of Gen Z identify as spiritual. Once you know that, there's a whole lot of clients out there that, now what does spirituality mean to them? So over a third of your clients that are in that bracket feel like they would they'd like to say to you, yeah, I'm spiritual. But as their counselor, are you going to ignore that? Or are you going to find ways to talk about that? And, so I have things that I say, like, you can ask at any client of any age, have you ever had a spiritual experience, or has anyone passed over and you felt their presence somehow? I'm telling you, I've never come across anyone who says nothing.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah, because there's all different sort of experiences that you can have, right? I know for myself, I had a student in my kindergarten class. I was the teacher, and she received a cancer diagnosis in my class that year. So at the age of 5, and had passed away 4 years later, and went through a lot of, like, every year grieving, because we would celebrate her birthday every year. And when we came to Thailand here, there was lots of dragonflies. And I started to make that connection, and that was for me. So is that kind of what you're referring to as a spiritual connection?
Well, as you're speaking, right, we think that we're separated by time and space or whatever. We're not. And as you were speaking then, I experienced these goosebumps, the legs and the upper arm. So that's my sign. And I'm not clairvoyant. I'm not, one of these woo-woo, I can get you talking to your ancestors people. That's my sign, which over the decades, right, I have learned, pay attention to that. So then I would say to you, whether you're a counsellor coming for supervision or my client, I would say to you, I had a little kind of tingly experience then when you're talking about this girl. And so I'm just wondering, what does that mean for you when you talk about her, which would be different from how you talk about your encounter with another child from your school?
Yeah, I think for me, it's more about there's always connection. So it wasn't an end per se, just because she passed. There's a continued connection and sort of uplifting of myself. Like, that's what she's offering me.
Yeah. I mean, I have I think it's the acknowledgements or the introduction of my book, I've got something like, to my lovely family, call my name and I'll be with you. And I can call on a couple of my ancestors like that. I can call on my angels. I say, if you ever see me doing this, I'm flagging a taxi. I'm actually saying to my angel, I need some help.
Now,
The connection's there all the time. It doesn't stop just because someone's graduated to primary school or graduated to a life without the body,
Yeah, exactly.
now, would you say that area is in your counseling experience a lot easier to do if you have a good connection with your family? Because I hear you talking a lot about your family, and like somebody like myself, I've had a really hard time with the spiritual side of life, and my family is like, nobody talks to each other, and it's like, it's nasty, and I feel like I have like zero roots.
Yeah, and it could be that you were born into a family for different reasons. You didn't have to kind of, reconnect in an ongoing soul contract with anyone from your family.
Yeah.
So it could be that you're born into that family, but there's someone else. It could be a teacher that saw you. Teachers, are in this special position where they see a child and sometimes they connect with the child particularly well. So, like, for example, if you were my client, Scott, I'd be saying, as you were growing up, was there a neighbor over the back fence that, passed you some cookies, or a sports teacher or another person in those, first, say, 10 years in particular, who saw you?
Yeah. Well, there was, however, almost everyone ended up sour.
Okay.
It's like my neighbor that was really friendly when I got older and got into my addiction. We ended up fighting all the time, and he ended up calling the cops on me all the time.
Yeah.
And then he was
And
my
again,
grade 6 science teacher, and it was just like,
yeah. And again, we're all human. So people
Yeah,
out of fear and not knowing what to do and feeling uncomfortable can push you away. But
yeah,
you, with those two people, there was like a liquid time
yeah,
that disappeared, like evaporated, like liquid does. But there
yeah.
was this time when you're in flow with them. You were connected in your soul and spirit with them. For some reason, they would have passed on to you this little kind of dose of acceptance and warmth. Whether it was actually love or whatever it was. These things, when we do that as an older person, when they're only 10 years older with someone, you can offer them something. It's a certain kind of grace, and they take that, they drink it in, and it becomes part of who they are. It's like a movie character. If you think about a movie from your childhood and you looked up to them, and they, that character will become part of you and the way you think in the world and value things in the world. You're drawn to that one. All your other family members were drawn to this other movie character, but
Yeah.
it's a very special thing that happens. Narrative therapy and how I work is all about how everyone's identity evolves. So never in a family with, say, 3 children does their identity all kind of merge and they're all the same. No, 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 because they're each individual spirits. They take from family members what they want, or disregard them, or try and push them away sometimes. But everyone's developing their identity in a different way.
I seen a posting on Facebook and it made a lot of sense to me. Like, I grew up in a house of 5 kids, and the statement said, not one kid grows up in the same household.
Absolutely, yeah. That's Gabor Mate, probably.
I don't, yeah, maybe. I can't remember where I seen it, but I think, I believe you're right. And it
Yeah,
was like, it just sunk in that it's like, and
yeah,
then it's funny, my older brother's going through some stuff, and he was back in my life for about 4 years, and it kind of ended again this year. And
yeah.
he sent this nasty letter out to everybody, and I didn't respond. And I normally would respond. And then
Mm.
all of a sudden, I've been sitting on it for probably a month now, since Mother's Day actually. And you know what I realized I need to do? If I do different, I might get different.
Yeah,
Like, if I respond with love and care rather than
React.
reaction. I still haven't wrote them back yet because I was waiting until I got back here, and it's been a lot of
yeah.
chaoticness in the last couple weeks. So,
Look, I think we're born. A child is never, coming out of the womb, out of the belly if it's a cesarean, or the vagina if it's a natural. But they're not born feeling hatred towards people. Things happen in people's lives, and at a certain age, they're activated, and things can happen. Now, that might be because there's a karmic connection, and they need to tussle with someone. So in families, often you've got opportunities not just to tussle once a week at work, but every day. So,
yeah.
you're placed in a family where things don't go wrong. And you think, oh, no, but actually, you probably, of all people, will really understand when things go wrong in families.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas people that never have had that, they can't understand why people can't just make up, you know.
That's
I
our
don't understand that either. It blows my
Yeah,
mind. It's like,
that's right. Because we all have a different mission. When I was a kid, I used to love James Bond movies, at the big screen. I was like 7 when I just was hooked on James Bond. And he'd go and he'd get his mission. And it's like, that's what I feel this earth's like. We've each got a mission.
I
well,
love that.
you were talking about how we're put together for a reason, and it's like a friend of ours, she's a coach, and she was, anyway, she's a coach, and she goes, I want to try something with you guys. And she got us to write down everything we dislike about her mom, everything we dislike about her dad, everything we like about her dad, and then hit the glaring ones. And apparently that's why Lisa's in my life, to help teach me and help show me that it can be different or heal it.
Yeah, yeah. And look, the ancient Greeks believed that before birth, that you had a guardian, a guide. In the Christian traditions, we call them guardian angels or whatever. But anyway, that there's some higher being that knows all your past lives, or knows all about you when you're not in a body and when you're in a body. They have this knowledge about you. They're not you, but they've made a commitment, like meant to be your mentor for your eternal life, however that is. And that the ancient Greeks said, you come they guide you first to these three fates, the Mirai. And, the first one pulls out the thread and says, this is where you're going to be born, at what time and where. And then the second one kind of looks at the thread and says, oh, you're going to have these challenges and these joys. And then the guardian takes them to the third one that says, right, and that's the date you're going to die. And then you absorb that, and then again, your angel then knows that. They have the information and they can put that down on the memo for your whole life, and you've agreed to it, and you sit down then by the river of forgetfulness, and you take a drink, and then you enter the womb, and you come out, and you just scream because what the heck? It's a big shock. Well, but that's the thing. Over time, your whole memory of what's happened and what you've come to do is recorded. Some people say it's on the Akashic records. Some people say you can turn to your angel and ask, which way? And in the book, I talk about how my angel, when my angel sees me stuff up, like respond in a bit of a careless way in an email, or I see someone wants help, and I don't give it, or I walk past the homeless person because I think, well, I've just given $2 to that homeless person. What am I going to do? Like when I do that kind of thing, I know my angel's watching over me, going, all right, Kim, yeah. They can't influence me to do something. So my angel holds this knowledge.
I love that. That's I loved your explanation of when you were born. Well, the direction of where you're going to be, and then when you were born. I really like that. One thing that Scott and I were just talking about today, it's like both of us have really bad memories for things, and whether it's a long time ago, whether it's even recent. And is there something to that when we talk about that forgetful river and understanding those things? And because sometimes we're kind of like, oh my gosh, I don't remember. Oh my gosh, I don't remember.
Yeah.
They're a connection.
Well, we can't even remember what the last minute was because our senses don't give us everything. Our sense, the way we work as a body and soul is that we can't process everything, every sound we're hearing, everything I can see in the background of your pictures, every little bit of nonverbal language that I'm witnessing, all those things. It could also be, I've got 3 adult children, maybe one of them's struggling today, and normally I'd be open to them, not phoning me or reaching out to me, but I'd be open to kind of like just quietly picturing them and giving them my wishes and getting on with things. Like we cannot be open to everything. So our memory is selective to what we're doing. So I say to clients who maybe can't remember the very first time they felt validated. And I'll say, well, it might have been a teacher when you were 6. Might have been, you were 12 and this sports coach said, that was a cool shot. You took your time, you lined up, and that was a good one. They might not remember those initially, but as soon as I start to say things like, would it have been in the classroom or outside the classroom? Would it have been at another family member's house, or would it have been in your back garden? Where would an early validating moment have been? And literally, that's enough information usually for people to go, oh, actually, I can't tell you how many people say, no, I've got no memories when I was a kid that were positive, everything was shit, And then all of a sudden, and then the next session, it opens the door, and then they start to access more memories. The problem is with counselling and psychotherapy and all that is people come in and think they only have to talk about problems. And so those doors are going to be closed. They actually, there's a protective mechanism. Whereas in narrative therapy, we go in and we want to know about the person's identity, how they evolved. And in narrative therapy, in line with Carl Rogers, one of the early psychotherapists, there's this picture of the person in front of you as someone that, has a natural tendency to growth and to love and all those things. And we want to speak to that person.
I
Yeah, we
love
want to hear about the problem. We're not dismissing the problem, but who is this person, you know?
Yeah, there's more to them than just the
Well,
problems.
I spent years going to counselors, and today I kind of use the term talk therapy because you feel great when you're in the room and you walk out and it's, ooh. However,
Here's a quick pause in the conversation to invite you to join our Facebook community, Soulmates and Suitcases podcast. Tell your story, amplify your voice, where we share upcoming guests, new episodes, and conversations from the podcast. And you can catch all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now back to the show.
however, after being around years and not giving up, that's the point there, not giving up. And so I found this trauma therapist, and she actually wouldn't let me talk about the problem.
Yeah, get that.
It's all her term was, if you keep rehashing all the problem, all you're doing is reactivating all the stuff and you can't get past it.
Yeah. Some people want a platform to name it because they've never named it.
Yeah.
Often it's the first time that someone will say, "Look, I was actually sexually abused when I was 11," or something like that. So you need to hear that. They want to pay you to listen to that, and that's important. But if they come back each week and bring only problems, we want to because I often use the image of the gardener. We want actually to put those problems into the soil underneath. And what seeds are we planting? And who is this gardener I'm sitting with? Because I'm not going to plant. Some people say, "Oh, I'm a counsellor. I plant seeds so that the person can go on and do it." And I went, no, that the person plants the seeds. They take from the session one or two things that they plant. You have to give agency to the person and not have the counsellor as an ego wanting to be the healer.
Yeah. They're just the guide or the mirror or the.
Yeah, we could let that again. It's like it's hard to put in one word, but being a mirror is very powerful. Sometimes very painful.
That's
Yeah,
kind of
yes.
what, other than Kimberly, I've had
Your
better
therapist,
success,
yeah.
the therapist, I've had better successes with coaches
Yeah,
because they don't attempt to give me any answers. All they do is ask questions and let me go. And it might be a week later going, oh, that's what they
Yeah.
meant.
yeah, yeah. Because again, in the counselor and psychology training, we're trained to look for problems and
Yeah.
identify problems, and then we're supposed to, according to the patriarchal way of psychotherapy, is fix the problems or give strategies. Like in narrative therapy, we don't do that. We want to hear how the person narrates their story. Because their language will reveal either negative self-talk or resentments and that kind of thing. And slowly we can unpack some of those things. But we don't come in with a pre-designed way of approaching with strategies.
Yeah, I love that sort of therapy. You're talking about people come into you and just want to be able to kind of download or offload their problems and be heard. And I just as an observer, I watched more or less Scott do that with his first book. He was able to download all those past sort of memories and things that were challenging. And it's interesting because like probably a year or two after the book is out and done, I'm hearing about these, I'll say more positive stories come to the light. And I'm like, those never made it in the book. And so it's like very interesting to see kind of what is able to rise after the let go.
It's actually quite funny though, when she brings up that my sister and my brother, I got another brother that nobody really talks to, and my brother that we just had the falling out, my sister, but the three of us have almost the exact same story. And it's bizarre because I sit back and go, no, you got treated like this. And they're like, no, you got treated like this. And it's like,
Yeah.
bizarre.
Again, someone could speak rudely to me, and then someone could speak in the same rude way to someone else, and they'll perceive it differently because they're receiving it, and
Yeah.
they feel it is a description of who they are or whatever. Whereas I think, wow, this person's really struggling at the moment, and in psychology, they say, oh, he was projecting on me or something like that. Or I might use the pointing finger where there's 3 fingers pointing back at him. So if he's pointing the finger at me going, huh, blah, blah, I think, oh, wow, imagine what his day's like, so there's more of an acceptance that everyone's got their own struggles. So that's why sometimes in families, people have different stories of what happened, even though, the same thing, you might have witnessed the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On the back of your book, and I wrote this down because I think this was very important. On the back of your book, it says, research shows spirituality plays an important role in mental health and resilience. So spirituality and mental health and resilience, yet soul and spirit are rarely addressed in counseling education. So have you seen any shift in that? Like where does it need to go? Like
No shift.
How do you open that can of worms?
Yeah. Look, I work at a university. I'm not going to say which university, but I work at a university training and mentoring not lecturing anymore. I did for a while, but it was like, I realized that wasn't where my strengths were and that kind of thing. So I mentor them when they go on their placements to do the practicum side of their counseling. And I ask them, go and have a look at your textbooks and look at the back in the index and see if the word spirituality, spirit, soul, or love is. And come back to me. There's a prize if you come with a yes. So we're not there yet. But we're also no longer in Kansas. One of the chapters is saying, we're not in Kansas anymore. So we've left behind, but there's a lag, Like often the grandparents of my clients wouldn't have a clue what we're talking about. Soul, like they. But people now have this in their language. But even if you look up the definition of love, it'll say things like, "Oh, that's something that helps the species stay, evolving and growing and continuing." It's like, well, okay. So yeah, these are, and again, that's one word, and we've got to unpack it. What is love? And most people put their hand to their heart. So love is something to do with the heart. Or what is the heart? Well, now all the research says that the heart isn't just this pump. It is a vortex of energy. That in that vortex of energy, that's what moves the blood through the energies of the vortex. So anything that's like vortex moving round and round, that spins a really big energy out. Like the galaxies move around and round. We go around the sun. There's huge energy moving. It generates when your motor in the car is moving around, that generates energy. So basically, the quantum science hasn't come into the therapy books yet either, where they say there is actually no separation. You can't think, oh, I've not connected with my client today, I'll shake their hand, now we've connected. No, you've actually already connected. Yeah?
Yeah.
Even before they arrive for a Zoom session or come to the consulting room, we've already connected. We might have even in our sleep connected at a level. Yeah. And people talk about that, or on the drive here today, I was thinking about this. And the quantum theories say we are connected. There's not a division, and we're not connected in the brain. We're connected outside the brain. Consciousness is not in the brain, it's outside the brain. So where is it outside the brain? It is limitless outside the brain. So of course we're connected. And these kind of things aren't talked about, even though all the universities and training institutions say everything's got to be evidence-based. Well, there's scientific evidence out there,
Yeah.
I had a little bit of a crazy experience, and I felt the sensation before, but not quite as intense. I'm laying in bed in Canada, Lisa's in Thailand, and I woke up and had her hand laying on her wrist, and I was shocked she wasn't there when I woke up, like when I opened my eyes. It was like the most bizarre experience that I've had in a long time, because it was just like, she's not here.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting, what I'm thinking from what you said before too, about how, you wouldn't want to kind of connect with people that had harmed you. It's very unlikely that you would have woken up and be holding on to someone that was abusive to you.
No.
I'm guessing, I had this sense as you were talking that you woke up filled with warmth and love
Oh,
for
absolutely.
Lisa, and
Yeah.
actually she's not there. So it's like when you love someone, you're just like really super connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when there's no love, there's not a connection. That's what we don't have to worry about saying to people who's watching over you, because the people that absolutely didn't do the right thing by you, they're not going to be watching over you. They might appear at a certain time when they die. I had this experience myself when the person who'd sexually abused me when I was 11, when I was in my 40s, 50s, I can't remember the exact date, but I was awake, I wasn't asleep, and I just felt this. I knew it was them. It was the same energy, and I couldn't see them, but I could see them without seeing them, hear them without words, and they were petitioning me with what I interpreted as "please forgive me, please forgive me." And I knew at that point they died and were doing their their life review. When you pass over, you go through a phase where you see your life from one end bit here down to the beginning, and what you do is you don't just see it, you see how you've hurt people in particular. You don't see all the juicy bits and the nice holidays. you actually, it could, because it's a lesson. It's a lesson for the things that we didn't do well. It's like the teacher's not going to go through your spelling list and say, you spelled this word really, really well and that word really, really well. That's redundant. What's really important is to say this one you didn't spell well. You've got all the others great, but what was it about that one? How can we work towards you kind of like mastering that, because it feels like maybe you got there almost. So that's what the angels do. They help us focus on what we ain't got right, so that we can get it right. I
This
think
is
I might have
really
lost my
school.
train
It's
there.
really school here that way.
Yeah,
And
totally.
the lessons are to be learned. That's the mission then
Yeah,
of
yeah,
of the human world.
yeah.
And
So
it's,
that again, this person who I'd thought of often, I used to think, why do they do it? 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 At different times it changed a bit from that, but it's like I was sometimes really angry about that. And I think that has helped me work with clients who've been abused, because I understand why you don't tell anyone for decades.
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
was in the
Yeah.
same situation, and I think I was around 11 as well. And I remember I couldn't tell my parents because it would be my fault. However, because where I grew up, I went back for more because it actually was somebody cared about me. And I remember that being in my head, and the torture of that for years was like, it was brutal.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's the truth though. So why deny yourself the truth? And like, that's what a lot of people say, because as soon as you can accept the truth, in my opinion, it becomes okay. And
yeah. And I think also, to get through life, you do have to stuff things away. Certain things have to be stuffed away until you're ready to deal with them. Like the brain isn't finished all hooking up and connecting until 27, 28. And then this front cortex is online. It's you know how sometimes when you close your laptop at the end of the day, it says, oh, hang on, we need to update something. So do you want to update, then shut down? You say, yeah. So we're not ready to deal with that until we've maybe reached another stage. Our angel will know when we're ready to deal with it. It's not that I was too weak and couldn't tell my mum and dad. Like, how do you put this stuff into words when you're 11? It's like,
Yeah.
so but things happen, I believe, at the right time. It's just that the general public think, oh, she could have reported, or he could have reported that, earlier. It's like, yeah, you know what? There's a reason things are contained. And then it serves a purpose, because you, Scott, will know when you read in the paper about people that have had this kind of abuse, or I'm working with clients, I don't have to think quietly when they've gone, they let that go on for 3 years. That was strange. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it takes time. And I think that's the hesitant thing. A lot of people want to, because we are in a kind of throwaway society and fix things quick, and it's kind of one of the blocks. I think people don't want to start the process because it can be long and arduous and all those sort of things, and expensive. Maybe there's another thing involved.
And shame. There's always shame.
Shame.
There's always shame. And that's why I use narrative therapy, because it's very non-shaming, the whole approach, you know.
How new is narrative therapy?
So look, the guys that started it, one was a man from Adelaide and one was a man from New Zealand, and they were social workers. They weren't counsellors or psychologists, they were social workers, and all their clients, you know, had really complex problems. It was back in the day in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And they met up, I think, in the 80s, and they used to go to conferences in America, and people would say, well, you know, the way you're working, you guys, is different. What do you call it? And they said, oh, we don't have a name for it, you know. And what it really boiled down to was the client comes in and they're kind of loitering with intent. They're kind of listening, and then they're not jumping in too soon, and they're listening, and then they're saying, you know, help me with that one, unpack that. Okay, you know. And there's lots of writing down of the client's exact words, because again, it's narrating. Client narrates their story, and it's fascinating. And eventually someone had said, you've got to call it a name. So they said, okay, well, we'll call it narrative therapy. That sounds good. Thanks for the tip, you know. But they were social workers. They weren't psychologists. So they weren't interested in the DSM or a diagnosis and oh, you've got this. We need to treat it like this. So it wasn't like you're my patient now. In fact, they often don't even use the word client. They'll say the person that's consulting me. So there's the person consulting me for, you know, some kind of new perspective in their life. So it's all flipped around. But I like the way they're very tentative and they don't jump in to make conclusions, and they really see the client as the expert in their life.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That, sorry, I just had a total brain fart. I call it a brain fart. But
I know, I thought I had a great question just earlier too, and it was like, gone.
And then it went.
Well, it's kind of like my history is like at 20, I had a year and a half off drugs and alcohol. Now on Friday, I just took 23 years. So there's been huge struggle, but through the struggle, I would always listen to the people in AA and I would go back and do the same thing. And when I came in 23 years ago, I won't say I did the exact opposite, but I did different. And I've gotten different. And then going back about 6 or 7 years ago, this girl started talking about trauma from the podium. And people are bashing her because you're not supposed to talk about that, don't you know? However, it says share your experience, strength, and hope, but you're not supposed to talk about that. You're only supposed to talk about this. But I got something from her, so I started researching all that. And that's how I ended up at my trauma therapist. And I got different. And a lot of times now, and I know I ruffle feathers, and I'm really okay with that because I have big shoulders. And do I want to? Yes, because ruffling feathers means people are looking at it. And I'll literally go like this and pretend this is the literature. I'll go, some of the answers are in here. All the answers are in here for some people. But if you're struggling and you keep struggling, and if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same result. And it's like, I know I've evolved since it's about decision. And since I've made that decision where I'm open to anything, life has evolved hugely. And it's like one of the only reasons I believe my wife's in my life.
Yeah. I mean, to be open to everything, you need to let go of fear. And that's what holds a lot of people back, fear of what people think of them. You know, people often stay in dysfunctional relationships, if you like, because they're afraid people will say, oh, hang on, I thought you were getting on really well with them. Or, you know, how can you leave your family and not go at Christmas? Or, you know, it's like, the thing is, everyone's free to do what the hell they like.
Yeah.
No one is telling us how we ought to live our lives. And to be open to things means you're open to living your life authentically as yourself, without fear of what people think.
Yeah. And it's okay to make mistakes.
Oh, totally. I think it's good. I think we need a dose of mistakes every day. Otherwise, we're not learning, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that other F word besides fear is failure. A lot of people have a hard time with that.
Oh, I did, huge. I was a big failure. And
Yeah.
today I look back and go, woohoo, I'm glad I was a failure because I wouldn't be the man I am today.
Yeah, but again, it's failure according to in narrative therapy. We really look at society's way of creating problems for people. They say, oh, you should be avoiding drugs, going to university, getting a decent career where you can help people, or blah 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 blah. It's like society sets these bars, which a large number of people are going to fail. I just read this morning actually that within 5 years, only very few people will actually have a job. Like literally, it'd be really hard to get a career going. And so I'm reading that thinking, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Now, are they going to be failures or are they systemic failures? Because the system is
Yes.
against them. So back in last century, right, people were told that you're a failure, and then people weren't aware that the system is creating failures, or then it's not robust enough. Like the schools today are completely failing children
Yeah.
that I'm not going to even say that they've got ADHD, because ADHD is a huge spectrum, but children that aren't comfortable just sitting still all day, which is completely unnatural, this present school system does not suit them, and things like that. So the system creates more and more problems for people, and it's when you become open and not afraid of being seen as a failure, or being afraid of what people think of you, then you've actually pushed the system to one side. You've actually said, oh, I recognize, and it's often this, and it's not male dominated, but it's like this paternalistic system that wants to control us, for whatever reason, whatever sinister dark side reason it's here. It actually does make us stronger in the end, because to push away from that is a huge thing.
Yes. And it seems like
And
we're in that majorly right now.
yeah. And to be honest, I remember when I first started counselling, I had quite a few teenage clients who had such minor problems that came from wealthy homes. There was no abuse. They were just having struggling getting motivated. Checked out. There wasn't like that, really low mood, aka depression. There wasn't total fear, aka anxiety. Again, narrative therapy, we unpack these things. And it was very minor things. It didn't feel minor to them. But what I'm saying is, when I started to work with more complex families, I sensed a robustness in these young people that these other affluent family teenagers didn't have. They were literally thrown by something small, like, mum couldn't drive for 6 months. She'd lost her license, so she couldn't get to see, and this is really hard. It's impacting my life here, and here. Whereas other people that I met, young people I met that were literally, in foster care and resi care, and come from really challenging home situations, they had grit. Their soul shone through. They were there. And, I used to sometimes say to my colleagues, if this client survives the teenage years, they'll be an amazing adult.
That actually brings up one of the questions I was conjuring, and I was waiting for the right time. It's like, so somebody like that you're talking about, you were saying, and they've said it for years, that you don't really get everything till you're 25 to 27. Now, somebody that's living a broken and disjointed life like that, what happens to them when they're 27? Did they really get any of this stuff that they're supposed to get by the time they get here?
Well, the opportunity becomes around, and obviously, if you've fallen into a pattern of addiction with drugs or alcohol, it'll be all numbed. It'll be hard to reflect. So once you're able to reflect on what your lived experience has been up till now, the resentment drops off a tiny bit. To be able to look clearly at your life, it isn't really possible until the late 20s. That's why a lot of students coming through doing psychology courses in their early 20s and stuff like that, it's like they haven't had time to sort out where the heck they've come from.
Yeah.
You need to have a certain maturity of not having processed your childhood. It's not quite like that. It's a matter of sitting with it and noticing it, and it's the work. It's the soul work that needs to be done in the 21st century. Early in the 20th century, the work that needs to be done is wringing out the washing and and doing all those physical tasks. Those physical tasks have been removed from us, and now people think, oh, I've got time to scroll on my phone, but actually there's something else that can be done with that time. And and I'm not saying anyone should be journaling or whatever, but there's this important job for us to move forward, and become an elder, if you like, and become someone who is a helper for others. That you don't just transition with nothing. You've almost got to go through the suffering, and to me, the more suffering, the better. And then you get gritty people who aren't going to be thrown by anything.
Yep.
I'm learning to express stuff with a little less grit.
Yeah.
And
'Cause people are terrified of that when you're too direct and too blunt, and it's like I look back at my story and it was horrific, and how I ended up where I ended up, I have no idea, other than the fact I never gave up.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you've mentioned that a couple of times, right?
yeah,
Haven't you,
well,
today?
it's
And
huge.
so to me, and this is what I say to people. I'm a counsellor, but I can't do this on my own. I've got a guardian angel and plus who else, and I'm guessing my guardian angel's in touch with your guardian angel, so the load is shared here. So when the fact you kept going, to me, indicates you didn't do this alone. That whether you kind of signed before your birth, you signed the contract for your life, and the people up there might have been going, Scott, really? You're going to go through all that in one lifetime? Are you sure? Are you up to this? And you go, yeah. And the senior, hierarchies will be going, whoa, in one lifetime, Scott, you're going to get through all that? Yeah. You say, yeah. Well, they'll say, look, we're going to give you an additional archangel, actually. So your angels can actually go to consult with the archangels and hold a space to keep you going and encouraging you to keep going, because your angel might have said, I don't know that I can do this on my own. So it's like there's always help. Literally, you ask for help of the spiritual world. There'll be ancestors, angels, and maybe, I don't know if you've heard of IFS. It's called Internal Family Systems, but it's huge. It's like the buzzword, Oh, I'm going to do IFS training, and now the founder of IFS is a psychologist. He's on Harvard Medical Board and all that. He's been around for 20 years. It's a very esteemed approach in therapy. And I caught him on a podcast last year saying to this guy, oh, there's ancestors popping in and angels popping into my sessions, but, I've never talked about it until now because I didn't want to be kicked out of the club, the psychology club, but now he's talking about it. So I can talk freely about it because he is. And Carl Rogers, who everyone says I'm person-centered in my therapeutic approach. That's from Carl Rogers, who in the 60s was writing books. He was an amazing person. And by the time he was almost, retiring, and 7 years before his death, he wrote a book, A Way of Being. And he finally admitted to his realizing that we are a soul in a body, and that spirituality is playing a role here. And especially when his wife was dying, she would talk about the ancestors visiting her, and he all of a sudden went, what? I've always been interested in the spiritual masters like Meister Eckhart, etc., and all those, mystics. And he says, he didn't say I'm a changed man, but he wrote about it without shame or fear of being kicked out of the psychology club. So I'm standing on the shoulders of these courageous men that started to speak out, and I'm completely unafraid to invite people to consider that literally just there, and there's no time and space available like that, is any ancestor, any angel.
Well, I had I had this
Great.
experience.
Final pause. If you've got a message on your heart and want to be our guest, don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. Visit forwardwalkingchoices.com, scroll to the Soulmates and Suitcases podcast section, and click apply here. Now back to the show.
I don't know how old I was. However, my wife and my previous wife, we ride motorcycles, and a long story short, one of my friend's wives died in my hands. So a couple of years later, I would see accidents between that, and I would go into shock. A couple of years later, I had a bunch of people over at my house, and I witnessed my friend, it was a rocking lazy boy, he squished our kitten. And so I end up, that weekend there was a big convention of a 12-step program, and we went there because it was the same weekend that Lynn had passed away. My sister-in-law just happened to be having a native sweat. And she told me I was going, she never even asked. And I'm sitting there, and all I'm seeing is Lynn's face and the kitten, and it just, and then all of a sudden my grandmother that died when I was 6 was up, I don't know if, I'm not quite 100%, but I know it was her.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she said anything or just went, it's all okay.
Yeah.
And fast forward quite a few years, I got so okay with accidents that I was able to participate in rolling a burning vehicle over and saving a family of 5. And I don't say that bragging, because I say that I wouldn't have been able to participate because I would have been so full of shock.
Yeah.
And so all those, it was pretty cool. Anyways. But I think we're starting to...
It makes me want to cry listening to it.
These are the stories that moment when your grandmother appeared to you. These are the kind of stories I hear all the time because I'm open to those stories, and people sense it, or I might, prompt it by saying, "Have you had a spiritual experience?" Now most people had this experience years ago, but they don't tell people because they're afraid of being told it was a hallucination, or you'd be kicked out of the club, as Richard.
You know what? I don't really care if it was a hallucination. Could care less, because you know what? It helped.
It served you.
It served me as a I don't want to use the word tool, but it serves some purpose.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is what I say to parents as well. One day, you might be watching over your children. Mm-hmm. Your children will be adults one day, and you'll have crossed over. And you think that if they were going through a tough time, you'd be turning your back on them and, picking the roses in heaven's garden, or would you be there for them, sending, whatever warmth and energy that you could? And people, of course, they say, well, of course I would.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're going to leave our audience with that exact thought, because that's perfect. It's exactly the connection and the visual that helps us to get through many things that can be challenging. So Kim, where can our audience find you? And yes, we could talk for hours and hours and hours still, but where can our audience find you?
I've got a website, which is my name, kimbillington.com.au. And basically there's a contact page, so you can reach me there. That's probably the easiest way. I do have an Instagram and Facebook, but they're not my primary things. I try and post things occasionally, but I have a YouTube channel which I often post therapeutic tips for counsellors, and often I'll have a session with a client or a counsellor, and it'll spark some interest in me of, okay, I need to share some information about how to deal with, say, resentment or whatever it is, So I'll make a little short YouTube clip, and there it is on my Kim Billington YouTube channel.
Perfect. And then show your book again, please. Where can our audience also get your book?
Well, it's probably going to be released early next month. Well, maybe even next week. It's not out there yet, but it'll be on all the usual, platforms.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Kim, again. We appreciate it.
Guys.
We both get to say thank you from Thailand, so I'll say kapun kas. Thank you.
Kapun krap.
Wonderful to meet you, and so nice, and I feel honoured that you shared so many stories, Scott. So thank you.
Thank you.
Looking for more inspiration around healing, love, growth, and possibility? You can explore our books at payhip.com/Lisa Scott Brearley Authors. And if today's episode meant something to you, we'd love for you to follow the podcast, share it with someone you care about, or join our Soulmates and Suitcases community online. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.